Go. Okay, well, welcome everyone to the AMSSM SMRC webinar. My name is Dr. Edwin Davila, and I will be serving as the webinar moderator this evening. This past year, I've been honored to be able to serve as one of the SMRC officers as the internal medicine representative. Tonight, we are honored to have both Dr. Jeffrey Bytomski and Dr. Stephanie Chu to serve on as our speakers for tonight's webinar. Topic being the do's and don'ts of supplementation for the athlete. Now, Dr. Bytomski will discuss the do's for the supplement, followed by Dr. Chu, who will discuss the don'ts for supplements. After both presentations, I will moderate a brief Q&A, so please feel free to enter your question in the chat throughout the presentation, and I will build them from there. First, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Jeffrey Bytomski. Dr. Bytomski is the head medical team physician and director of the Primary Care Sports Medicine Fellowship at Duke University. He was awarded the distinction of fellow at the AMSSM in 2020. He is also a fellow and past president of the American Osteopathic Academy of Sports Medicine. Dr. Bytomski has also been involved with USA Basketball, covering their men's and women's teams in various world championships. Dr. Bytomski is also a member of the NFLPA Mackey White MTBI committee as the NCAA liaison and currently on the NCAA Concussion Advisory Committee. He is also the director of the Duke Sports Medicine Concussion Program. Dr. Bytomski, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me tonight. It's always fun to hang out with AMSSM, and I've done some things with Stephanie before too on some committees and moderating and things in the past. So it's always fun as well. So hopefully you guys can see my screen okay there. Hear me okay? Perfect. So again, I'm going to talk about the do's of supplementation, and then Stephanie will talk about the don'ts. And then at the end, like I said, we'll have the question and answer. No disclosures. And this is a do for supplements, and I'm also a do for do things without supplements. So, the golden rule of health is to eat well, move, and connect mindfully every day. And again, I think my top 5 supplements, and not for elite athletes, but really I think for us as sports medicine physicians, primary care is really, lifestyle medicine and getting our patients to move and be healthy. I think those 5 things on the bottom are much more important than I think people talk about with supplements. And so if you look at Patty Barrett's a doc in England, I follow a little bit in Ireland and Europe. And again, same kind of thing. I just don't want to, I want to say, supplements, and we'll talk about the definite do's and the definite ways they can help you, but also for a lot of our patients, for the most, those normal weekend warriors, those kind of things, please don't forget these kind of things here with what we need for health. And these are some of the main things. If you do all these things, the supplements, again, for our elite athletes will get them over the top for success. But for most everybody else, if they do these things, it's much more important. Again, that small margin difference, right? It can be, Brennan O'Neill here, one of our best lacrosse players. It can be the difference, between winning a championship or failure. And so getting that one goal, making that one play, all these things they work hard for, these supplements can make those small margin difference as long as you're doing the other things well, of getting good sleep, having a good nutrition program, and having the right training program. If you don't do any of those right, then, the supplement probably won't get you there. And so again, a lot of people use these as shortcuts, right? Or they overestimate what they can really do, just like our society, right? The culture is, I want to take a pill, I want to take Ozempic, I don't want to, eat less and exercise more and do these other things that I can do to help with weight loss. I just want to take a supplement instead. And so I think, looking at those things, understanding those limitations, and then these bottom things, as Stephanie will talk about more of the things when you think about with supplements. And again, what is it? And I think it's pretty obvious, right? But it's a component that we're trying to hopefully ingest and add for aiming of achieving a specific health goal. What are some of these goals that we can kind of think about, and who uses them? It really, and I'll have one other slide next to, it really varies, right? With activity level, the elite level versus younger versus older, men versus women, and what do they take? And even cultural norms, right? In different countries, you might, people will take different things versus not. So it really is, a lot of these are factors in that. This was a nice systematic review that came out a few years ago. And again, if you look at between elite and non-elite per sport, elite athletes usually take more supplements than the non-elite athletes, because again, they're trying to have those, get the gold medal, get the championship, compete, get that scholarship, right? As far as that. And then interesting thing, when you look at the dietary supplements between men and women, they're similar, but women seem to use more iron, and men use more vitamin E, protein, and creatine overall. And then just because we talk about older elite people, don't forget about the middle school and high schoolers. Like, I think this is a little surprising if you look at some of the numbers. So the first one, protein supplements, and I'm not going to talk about as much as those whey protein and those things tonight because I want to talk about more performance type supplements. But obviously, this helps with performance and muscle building and can be. But luckily, I'm happy to say, at least if you look at this is the highest percentage they were using getting protein, which I'm happy about as far as that. But then you look at some of these other things. So this is probably more into the creatines, the HMBs, and some of the other things that people will use for muscle enhancing supplements. Again, still, gosh, 11%, I think in middle school and high school kids. I think that's a pretty good number when you think about it. A lot of these are, probably more recreational athletes, but a lot of that probably maybe in club sports or other things using. And then kind of, to me, more surprising things, these anabolic steroids, right? I mean, this is, to me, that's something that nobody should be taking, unless you have some, obviously hormonal deficiency. But look at that, 6% and almost 5% of girls in a middle school and high school kids, again, taking anabolic steroids, I think is a pretty scary fact. And, again, where are they getting them? Where are they getting information? How are they taking it? How are they being, all those kind of things are pretty concerning. And I just want to bring to light here a little bit, again, and some of this abuse among athletes. The Taylor Hooten Foundation is a really cool foundation of parents that started this to really try to bring this to light and the risks of taking these performance enhancing drugs at such a young age, anytime, but especially starting at this young. Again, look at the percentages here of who's admitted to taking them, 8%, and then, or they know someone who's taken them, at least a third. And again, most of these, like 1 in 5 believe it's the only way to get to professional sports is you're going because that's what they're all doing. And so again, just something to think about that, we're seeing some of our adolescents athletes for their PPEs or other times think about, that they might be using some of these things. And so what's the why, right? So either there are different whys. One of them is to correct or prevent nutrient deficiencies, right? May inhibit performance. Obviously, for like the protein supplements, provision of energy, nutrients around exercise, carbs, proteins. So we think of that especially again to achieve a specific or direct performance benefit in competition. Or again, probably this is probably the big paragraph, right? And I think where most of it and what we'll talk about and focus on tonight is performance improvement. And whether it's in, again, weight training or through competition, also with recovery, when you think like, tart cherry juice or all those other things, recovery type of things, hydration, all those things, and then optimizing those other things there. Or again, some other things, reducing risks and injury of illness, right? So what are some of those things you can do with risk prevention? Some of the people, right, financial gain, if they have a sponsorship, they're going to use it and they have to, do those. So you'll see that as well. Or again, these last couple, just in case, or everybody else is doing it, right? They know everybody else in their sport is doing this. They don't want to be left behind. So even if they believe it or not, or that they're going to use it because of that. And so what are some of the ways or what are some of the hows is kind of similar, but like, and I'm not going to focus on these tonight, but, prevent or treat nutrient deficiencies. Usually in America, there's not too many of these things going on. Maybe vitamin D is low in a lot of folks as far as that, and iron in female athletes especially. So those things, some things to think about. If we think about even in our diets today, that might be something that will definitely be needed. And then again, practical form, like I said, the protein bars, shakes, sports drinks, and again, taking care of the college athletes here, right? I mean, I don't know how many of them, fatigue or they'll come in or they work out, they felt like they're going to pass out, right? So the trainer brings them to you and then like you ask them, well, what'd you eat today? Well, I haven't eaten yet today. It's like 4 o'clock in the afternoon and they've already done workouts in class and everything. Well, I didn't have time or I didn't get up, right? They don't plan some of this sometimes. And so you got to think of these things of convenience where they can get those calories because they don't realize how much they can really eat that they need for the training they're doing. And what I'll focus on tonight is really what are the ones that kind of directly improve sports performance. So especially creatine, caffeine, nitrate, beta-alanine, sodium bicarb, probably the more common, most data and shows that they really do improve performance with that. And then some of these things, obviously the indirect ones, and again, especially towards the bottom there, are maybe not as studied or showing as much benefit. But again, people are still using them a lot. That's a nice site I really like to use. I've used it for many years to kind of look at things for supplements. The Australian Institute of Sport, and they have their recent August 2022. And they kind of break things down into A, B, C, D categories with that. So you can kind of say, obviously kind of like what we do for, studies and statistics, right? So, the what's the data show and kind of same kind of thing. A is obviously the best and D are the not permitted and harmful. And so if you look at here, looking at group A, again, strong evidence for use as far as that. And We can kind of in the way there, but strong use. And if you look at the three big categories here, sports foods, medical supplements, and performance supplements, again, this is what we'll look at tonight. And I'm really going to focus on creatine, caffeine, and nitrates as far as that. So I think those are some of the biggest things that can really push people, over the edge for performance wise. You look at Group B, again, emerging evidence. And a lot of people, if you look at last category and the other, I think there's been a lot of kind of things or study, especially curcumin for inflammation and with that, especially when you get older, arthritis, those kind of things, and the fish oils, ketones and carnitine also for muscle as well as collagen. And then you look at Group C, kind of really not as much evidence, right? So we're like, maybe, maybe not. And I think the biggest thing I see is the BCAAs, right? Branch chain amino acids, those things are in like every pre-workout thing that you can see. Everybody's touting that when really you should just eat protein, but I mean, but they really tout these things. They're very expensive. Leucine can be obviously is the best one or best muscle building amino acid that you want when you look at those kind of things. HMB can kind of be in that similar category where again, you're trying to look at those muscle building things. And that's really, I think, where a lot of the literature in this Group C, a lot of the supplements you're going to see kind of go into that category where they kind of throw them in with all the pre-workouts. And then Group D is your banned substance list. So you can go to the WADA site or those other sites to see, these are all obviously the bad actors that you don't want to be taking as far as that and the banned list. So you can look at through all those. So let's talk about the top three, at least not necessarily, but mostly top three. I think creatine, and we kind of talked about this a little bit before the talk, that I think, yeah, put it in the water. Creatine's amazing. So it is one of the ones that really, it helps in so many different ways. And again, this is the cascade back to your biochemistry days there with your ATP cycle. That's what it's helping to do, is get that ATP back going so you can do these short burst exercise, right? So creatine loading can also enhance the performance. So you do the loading and then you go through maintenance phase with it. It's found in, I think people don't realize this too, but it's found in beef, chicken, fish. But again, it's not enough, and also produced by liver, but it's not enough. You really need to supplement to gain the ergogenic effects that we see in a lot of the studies with creatine. And the other cool thing is it's very inexpensive. If you just go and get a quality supplement and just get creatine with all the other stuff that people put in with it, it's very inexpensive. It's gone up to what it used to be, but it even used to be about $5 for a tub of it, and it would last you a while. So it's one of the more inexpensive supplements out there if you don't mix it in with a lot of the other stuff that people tend to do. Again, we saw the mechanism there. Again, it increases your muscle creatine stores, augmenting your rate of creatine and your ADP to ATP, and get for those bouts of repeated high effort exercise. But some interesting things, or the loading phase, again, 20 grams per day, 4 doses. Get that in for at least 5 days or so, and then you can move on to 3 to 5 grams a day, single dose for the duration. And it depends on, you can use it with doing it with protein and a carb source may enhance the uptake. And I'd say post-workout is what most of the things will say, but there's some that say just probably any time around a workout is probably, or if you throw it in with your pre-workout, whatever, is just going to be fine. Like I don't think timing is as critical like that, as long as you're just getting it in every day to keep those maintenance levels up. And I'm not going to talk about any side effects of any of these. Stephanie will talk about that in her talk with that. So I left that out. Again, performance, there's probably one of the better studied and just things. Again, the short bout exercises are really where it's at. Again, keeping lean mass as well as keeping lean mass gains. Some more interesting things I found is that even in some endurance performances, things you wouldn't think about, but even there were some studies to show it even helps in these endurance sports. Again, possible anti-inflammatory, antioxidant effects. And the bottom couple too, maintaining lean mass during recovery. I don't think people think about this one as much, but really when, an athlete, they have an ACL and they're recovering from surgery and they're not doing some other things, man, taking creatine can be really important during that time to keep their lean mass with that. They all get the atrophy and all that. So it's really, improving that and doing that is really important. And then there's some concussion literature too, right? Creatine in the brain and things. So I don't think people think about creatine for that too. So I'm like, again, everybody take creatine. That's take home point, number one. And then we'll move on to caffeine. So, right, caffeine's also, right, the amazing wonder drug that a society is built on, I think, as far as that. And I think most of us, or at least some of us there, right, we drink a bunch in the morning, get that afternoon crash. So how can we maybe avoid some of that? I think one other fun thing is we all know it's a stimulant, and the athletic performance and and the way it works is a lot of different ways. But I don't know if you saw this recently. Good old Dan Campbell has his 2 venti coffees from Starbucks with 2 espresso shots, so 1,100 milligrams of caffeine in the morning, which is just unbelievable. As far as that, see this video, you hear it.
So normally what I do is I'll get 2 venti. I go to, Starbucks, I get 2 venti of the pipe with 2 shots in them. So black eye in both. That's what I come in with. That's how I start the day. So
we'll talk about this a little bit, right? This is the mechanisms, how it works, right? It does a lot of different things, right? Especially the adenosine receptor antagonism. It's especially for your board question things. That'll be one of the things there probably. And then again, with the improved vigilance, alertness, right? Perception of exertion during exercise, all these kind of things that it does, the endorphins. That's where we think we get all these things, right? The mechanism of action, and some really good studies to show that. What's kind of the dosages, right? So 1,100 milligrams is probably a little over the top, right? So most of if you look at the pre-workouts, a lot of them probably be between 100 to 200 milligrams. If you look at it like I want to say, I think a regular grande or venti Starbucks without the shots is like 300 or so, 350, something like that in range with that. And again, FDA come out with 400 milligrams per day, some of that, and 200 in pregnancy. But again, right, as you can see with Dan Campbell, there's a lot of variability, right? Like the tolerance and who can take it and mass size and everything else, but it doesn't mean, you still got to be careful with it. But if patients maybe ask, probably 400 milligrams probably safe per day with that. So obviously coffee is probably the most common sources in our diet. I think people realize that Coke only has like 35 milligrams. I don't know if people realize that. You have to drink a lot of Cokes to do that. Tea will have more than that, but really coffee is the way to go. And for health, there's a lot of great things for coffee and health we'll talk about, but that aren't related to the caffeine. So let's move on to nitrates. And again, most common things, beet juice, as you can see that, but they're common to do that. So again, it will help with prolonged submaximal exercise. And again, it's kind of these same high intensity, intermittent, short duration bursts is how it kind of works there. And again, just has a lot of other good nutrients and things with it too. How does it work? Its mechanism, again, enhances nitric oxide, right, bioavailability. So we're getting all those nutrients and things we need to get muscle firing, get to the tissues to augment, enhance muscle function is the main way it works there. And then kind of how do you use it? So again, trying to get, some of those great foods that we should be eating anyway, right? Spinach, salad, celery, beetroot, all these kind of things you'd be eating anyway. And so you're going to get some of that in there as far as that, generally seen within 2 to 3 hours with that. And again, even prolonged periods is also beneficial, but also in highly trained, it is hard to get effects as you take it more for highly trained athletes. It's difficult to do. So it is something, but again, to me, this is all stuff we should be eating anyway. So why not, right? So really try to help that. But if you look at a lot of the pre-workout things, we'll have this in there too, and you'll see that with that. So for the take-home points, right, like we talked about in the beginning, focus on maximizing nutrition and that for your training and recovery, right? Nutrition, good training program, getting recovery, doing all the big things first, and then get these supplements in that can really help you take you over the top, get those gains that you need to be successful, but really maintain that first point. And again, I think people don't realize there are very few supplements with really good evidence, right? We have the few we talked about, but a lot of them do not have much good evidence. And for a lot of folks, you'd be much better spending your money, eating better food, getting, get the, whatever weight things or whatever you can do for your exercise and your training program and nutrition versus spending your money on supplements with that. And then also performance, probably the best ones, we talked about these: creatine, caffeine, nitrate, beta-alanine, sodium bicarb. It was the way to go. If you're going to do supplements, those are probably the ones with the best evidence. And so thank you very much. And we'll have Stephanie on share my screen here and have her next up.
Thank you, Dr. Bytomski. And now transitioning over to the don'ts of supplementation, I'd like to introduce Dr. Stephanie Chu. Dr. Chu has been working with the CU athletic program since 2008. She is currently a team physician for the University of Colorado varsity athletic team, head team physician for women's soccer, basketball, and tennis. Dr. Chu has a special interest in the female athlete and leads the student athlete wellness team within sports medicine at CU. This team consists of physicians, athletic trainers, sports dietitian, and psychologists who work towards injury prevention and the overall wellness of the University of Colorado varsity teams. She grew up in the Midwest, primarily in Ohio, and is a graduate from Miami University in 1999 with a degree in mathematics and statistics. Dr. Chu completed her medical degree from Ohio University College of Osteopathic Medicine, her residency in family medicine from the University of Connecticut Health, followed by a fellowship in sports medicine at UConn Health. She's an active member of the AMSSM, serving on the International and Interorganizational Relations and Education Committee. From 2020 to 2022, she served as chair of the NCAA AMSSM Advisory Group on Athlete Safety. In 2020, Dr. Chu was selected for and is an active member for the NCAA COVID-19 Advisory Committee. Additionally, Dr. Chu served on the NCAA Competitive Safeguards and Medical Aspects of Sports Committee from 2018 to 2022 and was elected vice chair and chair of this committee from September 2020 to 2022. Currently, Dr. Chu works at UC Health Family Medicine Office in Boulder and CU Sports Medicine in Denver. Dr. Chu, the floor is yours.
Thank you. All right, so I'm going to talk about the don'ts of sports supplementation. So Dr. Bytomski talked about a lot of do's and a lot of positive things, and coming from a different angle and being on that NCAA committee, I had to sit on a lot of appeals of young male and female athletes that got into the weeds with supplements and got themselves into a little bit of trouble. So I'll talk about that later in my talk. I don't have any disclosures. So this is a great quote that I found, and it is apropos to supplement use. Don't believe everything you hear, don't believe everything you read, and only believe half of what you see. So that is important when we were talking about supplements and kind of educating our patients. So things that we should be wary of and to look at when we're looking at supplements are side effects. I'm going to go into some of the ones that the supplements in particular that Dr. Bytomski talked about, contamination, and then a little bit about resources that we can tell our patients to go to versus what they are actually going to when they are looking for their information on sports supplements. So this is the evidence. These are the ones, plus a couple others that have the most evidence behind them, but they aren't without side effects like everything else. So, you know, there's the supplements that we shouldn't do. These are the ones that actually have evidence for use, but then there's also side effects to them. So side effects that are pretty general and not, you know, terribly concerning if they were to happen are some GI stuff, some headaches, joint stiffness, dehydration. Racing heart might get into a little bit more, an irritability, some cramping, and typically these are probably found if you are going towards the upper limit of using the supplement and maybe not necessarily following those protocols that were spoken about before when you're taking the supplements. If we go and look at caffeine in particular, and we look at those higher limits. So for instance, what Dan Campbell might be doing in the morning every day, we look at the effects they have and the prevalence of the side effects. And if you look at the dosing at the bottom, it was, you know, low dose, medium, and then the high dose. And those, I believe, should be per kilogram as was previously reported. And you notice, obviously, if you are at the higher doses, you are going to notice more of those side effects. And some of the biggest ones are, you know, the tachycardia listed in red, and that is going to be immediately after exercise or shortly thereafter exercise. None of these are seen in red, so the prevalence was less than 80%. But still things that we should keep in mind when we are taking caffeine for exercise. If we look at sleep parameters, and that's that crash that Dr. Bytomski talked about, it is, you know, if we look at the higher doses, we have a lot more sleep issues. And in one of the earliest slides that Jeff talked about, you know, there were sleep is one of the things that is good for exercise. So, and activity and performance. And if we are trying to affect a positive change on our performance by taking caffeine before exercise, these are some of the negative things that can come with caffeine at the higher limit of doses. Creatine is something that, again, has been very, very well studied. And because it's been so well studied, the side effects have also been looked at quite a lot as well in the literature. And it is seemingly found to be rather safe. There is a side effect of weight gain. Some people use it to gain weight, muscle mass. So that could be a good thing and a bad thing. Water retention is something that's been looked at, and that's usually within the first several days of taking the supplement. Kidney damage and renal dysfunction is something that is more concerning and something that a lot of people are looking at and trying to use that as a creatine is bad for you type of message. If we looked at all the studies that they've looked at, they are thinking that the increased creatine concentrations in the urine can cause your kidneys to become overloaded. And then finally, dehydration and muscle cramping. Because of this possible side effect, ACSM actually recommends that athletes who are controlling their weight by exercising intensely in hot environments not use creatine for supplementation. However, in the studies that they used to cite this particular side effect, they were not controlling for dosage of creatine use, and they were also not controlling for other supplements, which is pretty important when we're looking at this side effect in particular. When we look at all of these side effects, there is actually in 30 years of literature that has been looking at creatine, there isn't any evidence-based scientific evaluation to support any of these side effects as being serious. And then finally, nitrate or beetroot juice. GI side effects are probably overwhelmingly the most common. The one that is less common, more studied, and more concerning is that there is thought that high levels of nitrate in the body can generate compounds that are potentially carcinogenic. When they looked at this in studies where they had subjects that took very, very high levels of beetroot juice above daily limits, they could not really prove that this side effect was valid. There were other studies where they didn't use beetroot juice, but they used nitrate levels in various water sources. And people were drinking a lot of this water that had high nitrates in them. And again, they couldn't find that this side effect was valid. However, as with all the studies that you look at with most supplements, they usually say that there needs to be more studies done in order to really show that the side effect is valid. So then we can talk about bodybuilding sports supplements in particular, and this is where it gets more fun. So if you look at bodybuilding, and if you do a search in GNC for bodybuilding, the supplements that come up on that page to go shopping would be the ones that have been mentioned in this talk already. And so if we look at those bodybuilding supplements in particular, there have been some thought and side effects that have been seen in bodybuilding supplements that have caused these particular side effects that are serious. So acne, hair loss, altered mood, irritability, aggression, depression, and then these side effects, which are actually quite concerning: liver injury, kidney damage, heart attacks, strokes, and then clotting disorders. So why would these supplements, which we just talked about the studies before, show that there were these serious side effects, and we haven't really seen those in kind of quality evidence-based studies? And the FDA kind of came up with a warning and a caution, and they say bodybuilding products can be risky. because some have been found to illegally contain steroids or steroid-like substances. And so if you think about those side effects that I just talked about, those side effects are pretty much linked to anabolic steroids and steroid-like substances. So that is why they give this caution and warning label to bodybuilding products in particular. And so if we go to the next bullet point regarding don'ts and the concerns with supplements, we're going to talk about contamination. And contamination is a really important part of supplementation and an athlete, especially an athlete that is trying to get a leg up, trying to win a gold medal, trying to do all those things. It can actually ruin an athlete's reputation. It can ruin their livelihood. It can ruin seasons and years of competition. So if we look at supplements and all the information out there, if you do Google searches, there's 97 million in sports supplements if you whittle it down to nutrition. If you look in PubMed at evidence-based articles on sports supplements within a very 5-year time frame, there's less than 1,300 articles. So there's a lot of information out there for patients and athletes, whether they're elite or amateur, to sift through. So are your supplements safe? A contaminant there are two different kinds, and this comes directly from NSF, and I'll talk a little bit about what NSF is. But a contaminant is a chemical or physical or biological component of a product that is either intentionally or unintentionally added to the product, which then affects the purity of the actual product that you are buying. So if we talk about unintentional contamination, this is the things that are naturally occurring in the soil. These are from pesticides or toxic chemicals that come by from nearby plants. So these supplements, dietary supplements, would mainly be those that come from plant sources. And intentional contamination is adulterating a supplement. So this is what we're talking about when we look at those bodybuilding supplements that are found, on the GNC website. These are knowingly putting small traces amount of performance-enhancing substances into a product that is labeled to do things such as make you stronger, help you lose weight, those kind of things. And a lot of those contaminated products can, one, be banned and illegal, or two, be actually substances such as the sibutramine, which is at the bottom here, which have previously been used to treat weight loss, like the Ozempics of the world now. And now they've been taken off the market because there's risk of stroke and MI seen in patients that had increased risk of cardiovascular disease, but no actual cardiovascular disease. So these are small contaminated products, small amounts of substances that are put into the supplements. There have been studies that have analyzed various dietary supplements and found these percentages that have shown contamination in various supplements that they have studied, which is concerning and somewhat scary if you're an athlete, not knowing where to get the right information. So where do we get the right information, and where are people getting the right information? So there's been a study that has kind of shown and talked about doping. And they looked at various studies across the board and surveyed a ton of athletes and asked them all, like, where do you get your information about supplements and training and dietary supplements? And overwhelmingly, they found that coaches, teammates, internet, and friends and family were the ones that they got most of their information from. When they looked at the actual percentages and broke down in various studies, they showed that, almost 74% of people, their primary source was friends, family, probably people at the gym and things of that nature, followed by coaches, athletic trainers, and then finally doctors and nutritionists were last on the list of who they went to. It was interesting. Younger athletes are more apt to ask trainers than older athletes for information on their supplements. And then endurance athletes often referred more to healthcare professional for their dietary supplement information versus power and intermittent sport athletes. So if we look and see where we should be getting our information from, and these are things that we can all search. So the last two are just where we can find doping information and banned substances within USADA and WADA. The NCAA and that NCAA.org/drug testing, they use something called access or drug-free sport, and that's things that you can Google. Everybody can get there. It comes up with, you can put the name of a supplement in to the website, and it'll come back with a red light, green light, yellow light. And so that is exactly what it means. If it comes back with a red light, then you should take caution in using that supplement. And sometimes it isn't the supplement in itself, it is the brand, company, manufacturer that produces that product. And then finally, at the top of the list are third-party testing. So NSF, I had previously mentioned, that was in 1944 formed, and it was the National Sanitation Foundation. Lots of iterations, lots of years later, they are just now called NSF, and they're a global health and safety organization. NSF.org also has a NSF certified for sport section on their website. So you can actually go to that section and type in a supplement, and it can tell you if it is safe or not safe to use if you're an athlete. And then it can tell you in their normal website other not athlete specific. Informed Sport is an organization out of the UK that has supplement testing for people to find products. The US Pharmacopoeia is one where supplements can actually apply to be put on and studied. And then consumerlab.com is another one that you can use to find information. It's important to talk to athletes, and you think about elite athletes, you think about college athletes, you think about those that are going to the Olympics. It's important to think about high school athletes. I've seen a lot of high school athletes that are going into college, and in those early like senior year or going into their senior year, they start taking supplements. That graphic that Jeff showed with what middle school and high school kids are taking. And sometimes they can take supplements and then they can flash forward to their freshman year at their NCAA institution and they get drug tested. And it is from a supplement that they took at the very beginning of their senior year. That could be contaminated. So it's important to kind of start this process early in terms of education and helping your patients out. So these are exactly what I was talking about. These are two banned substances from WADA and USADA, selective androgen receptor modulators and then hormone and metabolic modulators. These, per UCLA lab, are the top ones that have been found detected in their clients that they do drug testing on, and it's high school, college, and elite and Olympic athletes. The GW 1516 metabolite I've seen in urine 2 years after they've taken the supplement. And so that's a contaminant. And so it is not that they're taking it because that has been banned for years because it is was found to be carcinogenic. So you can think about an athlete that might take a supplement that's contaminated with that, and they will test positive for years. It is a very, very slow supplement to get out of your system. So finally, this is certification of supplements. These are, like I had previously talked about, unlike other drugs, manufacturers don't get any approval before selling the product. There is a Federal Trade Commission that is responsible for overseeing and requiring that the product be symptom specific and not disease oriented only. There's a reporting system if you find supplements that might be adverse or have adverse events, but it is voluntary. So you have to voluntarily report yourself, so to speak. US Pharmacopoeia, like I talked about before, has standards, but there are few brands that are actually USP certified. I think the best two are probably going to be NSF certification, and then there's NSF for sports certification, and then looking at the Drug Free Sport International website. So my take-home points are pretty easy. Buyer beware. Most supplements do lack evidence, need additional studies with a lot more diverse demographics and larger sample size. And then also there are a lot of resources that are out there for the physicians to counsel their patients and athletes to check for safety. And it's never too young to check for safety. So those are my references, and I think we'll be ready for questions.
Thank you, Dr. Chu. Now I'd like to open the floor to any questions that anybody might have. I've seen a couple in the chat that have already been kind of answered, but I'd just like to bring, I'll say them out loud just for everybody who's listening. The first question was in regards to the best way in which to obtain caffeine, with the mention that there's been uprise of the amount of utilization of energy drinks as also a secondary source. And the question came up of whether it was better to go with coffee or energy drinks and the like. I saw that you already mentioned your answer, Dr. Bytomski, but if you can mention it out loud, just so everybody can hear.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely coffee. It's just like, again, having normal nutrition, things that you can pronounce and eat, cook yourself, and that coffee goes along and more of those lines. Of course, we adulterate that too, right, with our Starbucks and adding a bunch of sugars and other junk to it. But really, you know, coffee was maybe a little bit of, you know, stevia or something, and, you know, almond milk or something like that. That's an amazing source of caffeine, as well as not just caffeine, but if you look at, again, besides caffeine, there's a lot of things in coffee, and we don't even know all of it. But if you look at some of those studies of people that drink coffee regularly, they have less mortality rates from cardiovascular disease and other things that, again, I'm not sure if we understand all the things that are in there, but there's, you know, a lot of other antioxidants and other things in coffee that, again, away from the caffeine, say you had decaf coffee, I don't want caffeine, that you can consider. I think for the energy drinks, right, it's the same thing, like all the pre-workout and the Jack this and now that they put in a lot of other stuff in it. And I think it kind of sends the wrong message probably to people, you know, just, you know, I mean, you know, down that real quick before I'm doing something, versus I think if a coffee is something you can have in the morning, and even when people are doing even more other things, whether it's meditation, reading, doing other things, and they're just sipping it all morning, compared to, you know, man, I'm just going to down this energy drink, 5 energy hour, whatever else. And I think that kind of sends the wrong message on some of these things too. So I think just coffee by far and away, the long answer, is the way to go.
Right. 2 questions have also come up about creatine. One's already been mentioned, but I want to make sure everyone hears. Talking about creatine cycling, I know that the focus was talking about the loading and the maintenance phase, but is there any indications or information or recommendations in regards to just if you have to come off of it or start it again or whatever have you?
I haven't seen that. And again, maybe it's my ignorance. Again, I don't know everything about everything, but I've seen it's more, even the loading dose, like they say you can do it, just get your maintenance levels up faster, but you don't even have to do the loading dose necessarily. You just can start taking it and you'll eventually get there. As far as that, I haven't seen as much of cycling, but maybe Stephanie or somebody else, I haven't seen that. I had a case though, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I haven't either. When looking at it, the protocols typically are just kind of that loading protocol in the studies that I've actually done. So I haven't seen actual written out protocols on the cycling.
Yeah, because I think again, it's just you'll maintain lean mass, even if you're not like maybe in another building phase or something like that. There's other benefits to it. But some of the other side effect things, like you know, there was one article way back when, or a case report of, you know, compartment syndrome from it, because again, like the water retention. And then I had a case as a resident where they end up we ended up diagnosing IgA nephropathy because they were taking creatine and probably just threw them over the edge with that. And so the IgA nephropathy was diagnosed because it probably wasn't taking it right, or whether it was contaminated or more of a dose. But I thought that was one of my first experiences with creatine and that, which was interesting.
Yeah, and I would say that despite, I know at our institution, despite what I said about, there haven't been evidence studies to show that it actually does, there's cases for kidney damage. We will check those athletes that have been taking creatine, their kidney function on, pre-participation physicals and stuff, just to make sure that everything's okay.
Yeah, great. Have you found anybody with anything?
Haven't yet.
I find, a ton, and I don't know if it's more African American athlete, we do BMPs on everybody when they come in too, and they're always, they're, creatinine levels always 1.4, 1.5, like a lot of them are, and whether it's, I don't know, little dehydration or not, but like they all kind of seem to be right at the borderline range of our normal. I need to maybe ask them more if they've been taking that or not. Interesting.
Yeah.
On the same topic of potential side effect profiles, a question has come up about some individuals have heard reports of potential GI distress with the utilization of creatine. Any information on that, and if so, any recommendations in order to avoid that?
I'd say either, put it, either with food, or say you're doing it post-workout. If you're doing it with your post-workout meal, put it in shake or put it in something else that might be that will help with that. It gets pretty chalky, if you just have it, if you've taken it before. It doesn't mix well with something, so you really gotta do that. So, put it in something else, or anything that will probably help that. So.
Yeah, I agree.
Don't
I
have
think
any
it's pretty tasteless. Like, I don't know, a lot of the ones I've had, it's really not, it's just the consistency, like if I just put it in like a pre-workout or water based thing, it's a little tougher to deal with versus like in a shake. So.
I see there's we don't have any additional questions yet in the chat, but I'd also open up to anybody who's listening in the audience that if you have any questions that you'd like to just verbalize right now, feel free to do so. If not, I'm going to take it. Good, I'll take it then. So just going on creatine, just because I'm sure everyone in the audience has either had at least somebody who brought this up. There's a plethora of different kind of substrates and new protocols or new molecules or formulations. I've not seen any data to be able to support that any of them are superior to creatine monohydrate. So I don't see any reasoning to try to dive into things that are just more hearsay. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I concur with that. Yeah, I haven't seen that either, or any of the other ones. That it's probably some more of the marketing things, right? They want to sell there's more than kind of like those Aretta, whatever, with the triamcinolone, that it's, that it lasts longer or whatever, they're just trying to make money as a different molecule or something like that. But I agree. And man, go with the tried and true cheap stuff, and with a supplement, just like Stephanie said, with the contaminants one, hopefully you can trust the brand, that maybe pay a little more if they're truly testing it to make sure you know what you get, because there's so much out there that you don't. So, and I think if you can try to get something that doesn't have all the other junk in it that people are trying to add on there and jack up the costs, would be helpful too.
Yeah, I would probably think that some of the newer ones that are not the creatine monophosphate that's been like studied the most, the one that's been around the longest, probably are going to be skeptical in terms of, if they're talking about it being better, what it's probably going to have a little bit of contamination in it, if I had to guess. Or else some of those newer ones would probably have a little bit more studies, and maybe in the next 20 years we might see something different. So
it was mentioned the importance of sleep earlier, and someone has a question currently about supplementation and the improvement of sleep. Any thoughts on the utilization of ZMA or magnesium in terms of trying to improve sleep and recovery?
I was familiar with ZMA. Magnesium has been, there's been some data for that for sure. With that, along with all the other, do all the other sleep hygiene things of, not looking at your screens and the coolness of the room and all those kind of things, go to bed at the same time. I think all those things are probably, but if you really do have the people that have things, magnesium could be helpful. I use magnesium a lot for our post-concussion things or headaches too, to try to use something more than medication post that too. So I'll use magnesium for that a lot too. But yeah, there's some out there. But yeah, I don't know, Stephanie,
Yeah,
if you have
similar. I'm
anything.
not sure about the ZMA, but magnesium, same. I've used it for post concussion if they're having issues sleeping. I use it for not post concussion if my athletes have issues sleeping, instead of using some medical management, seeing if we can add that instead. So
Very good.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah. Yeah, again, maybe add those couple of things, whether it helps or not with the zinc and who knows, or again, they're just making their new formulation to I think magnesium is what I've seen more of as far as that, and with adding the other two, whether that helps or not, I'm not sure. So
yeah, I agree.
This has been fantastic. Gosh, just if on behalf of just everyone in attendance, I just want to say thank you to both of you all for taking the time. I know you all are both very busy, and just to be able to share your knowledge with both ourselves, the residents, the students, and everybody present. Like this, on behalf of everybody, say thank you. I also want to throw out there that I'm pleased to announce that we have 2 more webinars scheduled for this year. One is going to be on Thursday at 8:30 Eastern, in which we will be discussing barbell injuries. And on next week and after that, there'll be a 2-part series talking about sideline management. I hope everybody can join. That doesn't mean that and I want to make sure if there's anybody else who has any burning questions that you just didn't want to ask, speak now. Very good. Well, thank you all again so much. And this concludes this webinar. Thank you.
thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Good evening.